The call came from a road that no longer existed. The woman on the line whispered that something was inside her house, but Pine Hollow Road had been buried for 17 years. The night shift at the Mercer County 911 Dispatch Center was usually quiet after midnight, just the low hum of fluorescent lights and the soft crackle of radio chatter from deputies parked along empty highways. And on October 14, 2004, dispatcher Erin Halstead had already poured her third cup of stale coffee when Line 3 blinked at 2:07 a.m., the system auto-filling location data that made her frown before she even answered, because the screen read Pine Hollow RD, and she knew that name the way locals know every bend in their hills. She had grown up hearing about the landslide back in 1987 that swallowed 3 houses and a family of 4, after which the county condemned the road, pulled it off maps, and left the broken asphalt to the forest. So when she clicked in and said, "Mercer County 911, what's your emergency?" she was already certain it was either a glitch or a prank. But what answered her was neither laughter nor silence. It was breathing, thin and unsteady, followed by a woman's voice so quiet Erin had to lean toward her headset to catch it. "Please don't send sirens," the caller whispered. "They'll see." And Erin's fingers paused above the keyboard as she shifted into protocol mode, asking for the address, asking for the nature of the emergency. But the woman only repeated that she was on Pine Hollow Road and that someone was outside her house walking in circles, slow steps crunching through gravel. And Erin typed notes while her eyes flicked again to the location panel, which showed no coordinates locking in, just a blinking error symbol where GPS triangulation should have been. She asked for a house number, and the woman said there wasn't one, that there never had been numbers out there, just mailboxes with painted names. And Erin felt a thin thread of unease tighten in her stomach, because that was true. Pine Hollow had never been formally addressed before it was destroyed. "Ma'am, are you alone?" Erin asked, keeping her voice even, calm, the way training required. And the caller hesitated before saying yes, that her husband had been gone for hours and she couldn't reach him. And now the footsteps were on the porch, wood creaking under weight, deliberate, unhurried, as if whoever it was knew she was inside and was savoring the waiting. Erin signaled to the night supervisor with a raised hand, mouthing the road name, and he frowned in confusion, shaking his head as if to say that was impossible. But Erin stayed with the voice in her ear, asking the caller to move somewhere safe, lock herself in a room, and the woman whispered that she couldn't leave the kitchen because the hallway lights wouldn't turn on and the dark felt thicker than it should, that it pressed against the walls. And as she spoke, there came a faint sound through the line, a soft drag like fingernails along wood, slow and patient, and Erin felt the small hairs rise along her arms because the sound was too clear, too close to be interference. "They're at the windows," the woman said, and Erin asked how many people she saw, but the answer came back strained and confused. "I don't see anyone. I just see the glass moving, like something is breathing against it." And the supervisor was already pulling up archived county maps, sliding one across Erin's desk with a finger tapping the faded line where Pine Hollow had once run before the landslide took half the ridge with it. And Erin covered her other ear to focus as the caller's breathing quickened, the porch boards groaning again, followed by a heavy thud against the front door that rattled the hinges hard enough for the vibration to hum through the phone speaker. "They know I called," the woman whispered, terror tightening her words. "They're inside now." And Erin's training kicked harder. She began dispatching deputies toward the last known coordinates of the old road, even though the system refused to confirm it, instructing the caller to barricade herself, to stay on the line no matter what happened. But when Erin asked her name, the woman paused for so long that Erin thought the connection had dropped, until she finally answered with the name Erin recognized from childhood news clippings, the same surname as the family buried in the 1987 landslide. And Erin's pulse stumbled as she glanced at the supervisor, who was now shaking his head more urgently, mouthing that it couldn't be, that those records were clear, no survivors. And then through the receiver came a crack like wood splitting, a sharp shatter of glass, and the sound of something heavy stepping onto tile, the acoustics shifting unmistakably from outdoors to inside, Erin's breath catching as the caller began to whisper over and over that they weren't supposed to find her again, that she had stayed quiet for years. And in the background there was another noise layered beneath her words, not footsteps exactly, but a dragging shuffle, multiple points of contact against the floor, as if several bodies moved too close together. And Erin felt the cold certainty that whatever was on the other end was not a prank, not interference, because the fear in that woman's voice was raw and human, cracking at the edges. And then the whisper stopped mid-sentence, replaced by a low exhale that did not belong to her, something deeper, closer to the microphone. and the line remained open, carrying the faint echo of splintering wood and what sounded like furniture being pushed aside, and Erin repeated the caller's name again and again into the void, her own voice sounding small against the widening silence. And somewhere miles away, deputies were driving toward a road that the county swore had not existed for nearly 2 decades. The line stayed open for 1 minute and 43 seconds after the woman stopped speaking, and in that span, Erin Halstead heard enough to ensure she would never work another quiet shift the same way again, because what filtered through her headset was not chaos or screaming, but movement, deliberate and layered, something sliding across tile in uneven rhythm, punctuated by short, dampened knocks like knuckles tapping from inside a hollow wall, and then a sound that made her throat close, a wet inhale drawn directly into the phone, as if whatever had entered the house had lowered itself to the receiver and tested the air on the other end. She kept repeating the caller's name, demanding response, fighting protocol's steady tone as the deputies radioed that they were approaching the old forestry access gate where Pine Hollow Road had once begun, but where headlights now revealed only overgrowth and a rusted county sign half swallowed by vines. And then the call ended not with a disconnect tone, with a thin burst of static that flattened into silence, leaving Erin staring at the blinking timer frozen at 0912 duration, while the GPS field still showed error, no coordinates logged, no traceable origin, as if the call had been placed from blank space. 20 minutes later, the deputies reported back, their voices tight in a way seasoned officers rarely allowed, explaining that they had pushed past the gate on foot, following what remained of cracked asphalt into the trees. And though official reports would later call it imagination fueled by expectation, both men independently described a patch of ground roughly where the final house had stood before the landslide, a clearing where the soil looked disturbed despite no recent rain, as if something beneath had shifted upward. And in that clearing were footprints, one set small and barefoot, toes clearly defined in damp earth that should not have been soft enough to hold impression, and alongside them another set, deeper, wider than any standard boot, lacking tread pattern, shaped almost oval at the front as though weight pressed unevenly across it. Searchlights found no foundation remains, no standing structure, no debris beyond what decades of decay would account for, and yet Deputy Klein swore he smelled wood smoke and something metallic in the air, like overheated wiring, though there were no active lines within miles. Back at dispatch, Erin pulled archived files, her hands unsteady as she scanned grainy newspaper scans from 1987, detailing the Pine Hollow landslide that struck after days of heavy rain, 3 homes buried under a collapse of shale and mud at 1:42 a.m., the article noting that one emergency call had come in that night from a resident reporting strange vibrations beneath the floorboards minutes before the slope gave way, the call abruptly cut off mid-sentence. And as Erin compared timestamps, her stomach dropped, because the disturbance tonight had begun at 2:07 a.m. But when she checked the recording metadata more closely, she saw something impossible. The internal file stamp showed initial signal detection at 1:42 a.m., 15 minutes before the call was routed to her console, as though the system had buffered it in some unseen queue. The supervisor insisted it was a glitch, aging equipment misreading packets, yet technicians later confirmed there was no origin tower logged, no carrier path, nothing to suggest the call passed through normal infrastructure. And, stranger still, when audio specialists cleaned the background noise, they isolated faint secondary voices beneath the primary caller, overlapping whispers too low for Erin to notice live, repeating fragmented phrases that matched archived transcripts from the 1987 incident, including one line spoken by the husband of the buried family, "It's under the house." Deputies returned to the site at daylight with county engineers, probing the soil with ground-penetrating radar that showed irregular density pockets far below where the original structures would have settled, cavities where earth should have compacted solid after nearly 2 decades. And one technician refused to finish his scan after claiming he saw movement on the monitor that did not match geological shift, describing shapes clustered together within the voids before the screen flickered and reset. Official conclusions cited residual slide instability and recommended sealing the access trail more securely. But that same night, after barricades were reinforced and warning signs posted, Erin stayed late replaying the recording alone in the dim dispatch room, unable to silence the memory of that final inhale. And as she adjusted the volume to maximum, she heard something she had missed. After the wet breath and before the static burst, there was a faint click, the distinct sound of a handset being set down gently rather than dropped in panic. She froze, rewound, confirmed it again, meaning the line had not been torn free during an attack, but deliberately replaced in its cradle. And as that realization settled, Line 3 blinked once more. The room was otherwise silent, supervisor gone, deputies clearing paperwork, and Erin stared at the display as it populated with the same words as before: Pine Hollow Road. No coordinates, no callback number. Her training told her to answer immediately, yet her hand hovered a fraction too long before she clicked in, voice steady by force alone. Mercer County 911, what's your emergency? And this time there was no breathing, no whispering woman, only a low hum like wind moving through a narrow tunnel, and beneath it, distant but growing clearer, the sound of many small impacts against wood, rhythmic and patient, as if multiple hands were knocking from the other side of something thick. Erin swallowed and asked who was there, and after several seconds a voice emerged, not female, not distinctly male, layered and uneven as though formed from several throats speaking at once, and it said only one sentence in calm unison: "We're still inside," before the line cut cleanly, system resetting as though nothing had occurred. Deputies refused to return that night, citing safety and unstable terrain, and by morning, county officials ordered Pine Hollow's remaining access permanently sealed with concrete barriers and steel fencing. Yet no measure altered what continued to happen at 1:42 a.m. on subsequent nights, when dispatch logs recorded brief signal spikes on abandoned frequencies once assigned to rural landlines, each spike lasting precisely 9 minutes and 12 seconds before fading. Erin eventually transferred to day shift, but even in daylight she would sometimes hear faint knocking through her headset during otherwise routine calls, subtle enough to question her sanity, distinct enough to make her glance at Line 3. And though no full conversations were captured, technicians admitted that archived equipment occasionally powered on after hours without human input, indicator lights blinking as though awaiting an incoming transmission. The county maintains there is no Pine Hollow Road, no standing structure beneath the ridge, no active utilities in that section of forest. Yet hunters avoid the area, claiming the ground feels hollow underfoot and that on cold nights vapor rises from a clearing where nothing should be warm. And if you stand there long enough, locals say, you can sometimes hear what sounds like wood creaking under weight and soft, synchronized knocking from below, as if something buried long ago is still testing the surface, waiting for another call to be answered.